Today, I have the honor of interviewing Joe Corby. Joe's been doing interviews of many people involved in food safety in general for the last few months. And now it's his turn to be in the hot seat. And Joe, we quite frequently call you the godfather of AFTO, the godfather of integrated food safety. So
How
tonight,
did I get that name?
yeah, how'd you get that name?
One of the former presidents of AFTO, Oscar Garrison, who was a real character. He gave me that name. We went to a meeting and met the USDA administrators, and these people recognized me, and it was a shock to Oscar. And then afterwards, he says, "Oh, you're the godfather of this organization." And then during the fellowship program, I was one of the early instructors. One of the first people I mentored was Natalie Dan, who was with Georgia Agriculture, and she worked for Oscar, and Oscar told her he's a godfather of food safety. So I don't know, it just kind of stuck. It's kind of fun.
So how'd you get started in food safety?
Actually, I didn't know I would get into food safety. My degree is in environmental health. Uh, I had an uncle who when I told him that I had this opportunity to work for a state agency, and my uncle was very wealthy, and I said, it doesn't look like they make an awful lot of money. He says, take the job, Joe. He says they'll have great benefits, and in 20, 30 years, you'll be very thankful. And I'm glad I listened to him. But actually, it was my Uncle Walt who told me to take that job with New York Agriculture, and I am so thankful that I did.
Talk about some of the challenges that you've seen over your years. And maybe you can talk first about what your first job was
Okay.
and how what you saw there, because the challenges you're working on today are so much larger and so much more strategic.
I began as a food inspector, and in those days, you just tagged along. You were trained in the field by other food inspectors. There wasn't nothing formally done, and you really didn't feel a big part of the agency. You just did your job, got your salary, and then you pressed on. So that was a little frustrating to me. And then I became a field supervisor. I worked in Buffalo, had a great staff, and I began to realize that these people that were my subordinates were really making me look good. I mean, they were smarter than I was. They had more expertise in certain types of manufacturing, and they were always making me look good, and I always remembered that. And then eventually I became a region supervisor and had more and more people. And again, these people made me look so good. Eventually I moved on up to become director, get involved in AFTO, and I never forgot, and I never will, those people who made me look good and become, have some acclaim nationally and with AFTO. It's because of those people. And the most important thing in my view a supervisor can do is reward those people, remind them how important their work is. I never forgot that.
Well, the other thing that you've really nurtured besides people is the integrated food safety system. Talk about how that kind of got under your skin and why you continue to be such an advocate.
Well, it really wasn't by design. It was probably more by luck. Of course, the person who really started it and offered the vision was Dan Smiley, who was with the Florida Department of Agriculture. He offered the vision. He's the one that the artwork on that cocktail napkin was Dan Smiley. Well, my luck in life or in my career was that I was president-elect when he was president of AFTO. And so, when he left and I became president, I just accepted the torch from Dan Smiley and pressed on. And I thought he would be there to help me, but then he went to industry and it was left to me. So, but he really set up the beginning of it, and I just ran with it for, 25 years. I'm still running, I guess.
But the finish line isn't here yet, is it?
Oh, it might take 25 more years, and I'm sure I won't be around. And that's why it is so important to keep these young people involved so they know what that integrated system will look like and what it's all about. And all the new leaders, there's always movement in our leadership. And God, it's so important that we make sure these people are aware of it.
Talk about the AFTO family. It's not just a membership organization.
Now, let me tell you why I got in AFTO. Maybe that will help. There's a lot of organizations that are great. I probably belong to most all of them. But there was a time when the authorities at the state and local levels were being challenged by this new legislation that was out on uniformity. And by the way, AFTO's motto is uniformity, as you know. But there was a uniformity bill out that would diminish or even eliminate the authorities of state and local agencies relative to adulterated foods. I mean, states and locals have seizure, embargo, stop sale authority, and that was being threatened. And we had state attorneys and large local health department attorneys look at that bill and said, they're going to take away our authority. Frankly, what would happen, you couldn't do anything unless you got approval by FDA. And people don't know this. It was AFTO alone at the beginning that fought that bill. They fought that bill and said, you're not going to do this. And odds were against us to win. But we eventually got NASDA involved and other associations involved and other important people at the state and local level involved. And that bill was beaten. And I was so proud of AFTO. And I said, this is the organization I want to belong to because they truly represented state and local people at that point. So that's really why I wanted to get involved in AFTO. And then, of course, integration came along and all these other things. You look how AFTO has grown. When I was executive director, I had a staff of 2. I think Steve has 30, he tells me now. I couldn't do that. So, but that's how good of an organization and important AFTO is.
So you talked about one point in time. When you look back on your career, what to you is the highlight? If you had to pick one, what would it be?
Oh, it'd be hard to pick one. I do remember the time that this young girl, I think she was 4 years old, died from choking on this gelatin candy. And this candy was everywhere. And because it was a choking issue, it wasn't viewed as a food safety issue. But the states and locals had the authority, they had authority to do something about it. And when we read the newspaper, and this was an imported product, we didn't know about it from FDA, we saw it in the newspaper. So when we heard that, we sent our staff out to look. And again, it was all over. And we immediately did press releases and recalls. We found out later that I think there were 24 children in the whole world that had died from choking on this candy. And I was so proud of the agency that I worked for and the people that went out and did these recalls. I think we recalled like 60 tons of these little candies. They're just little gelatin candies. I mean, there's been a lot of nice events like that I can relate to, but that one I will always remember because I could see where we clearly saved lives.
You always talk a little bit about putting a face on food safety. Why is that important?
Well, usually those faces, unfortunately, are children. And I think it's important so that people know how important the work that these people do at local health departments, at state health and state agriculture departments, and FDA and USDA. Putting those faces on food safety, I think, really shows consumers that there are people who care and that are people that are working to improve our system.
I know you mentor a lot of people.
Well,
How do you encourage them to become part of the community? What is it that you tell them?
that they're saving lives, that they are really, truly making a difference. And I go back when I was an inspector, and I talked to this a little bit about, I don't remember feeling like I was making a difference. I really didn't. And that, I didn't like that feeling. And I think when I mentor and when I talk with new people or field people, I want them to know that they are making a difference.
So, what words of wisdom would you share with people about the future of food safety? Often we focus on the negative, things aren't working well, we're not moving fast enough, but in the same breath, we've come such a long way.
Well, my words of wisdom, if it's wisdom, is we really need these people. Food safety is always changing. I mean, I could write a book about how it's changed. I mean, whoever thought apple cider would make you sick? Whoever thought produce would make you sick? Peanut butter. Whoever thought you could get sick from these products? But the food safety is always changing, and we need to keep training these people and educating these individuals so that we can be there to meet those challenges that are ahead of us.
So you and I have spent some time together over the last 3 years.
We've had some fun.
Yeah. Spending time looking at at AFTO's history,
We did.
but also looking at different issues in that face in food safety, from recalls to foodborne illness outbreaks. What prompted you to kind of become the storyteller?
Well, because I want people to know these things that we do, recalls and outbreaks. I want consumers to know that there is a group of people that are trying to prevent these things from happening and prevent them from getting illness. And I'm not sure that story gets out there enough, that they know we recall a lot of products, we investigate these illnesses, and that we respond to emergencies. These agencies and these people are always there, and I want them to know that.
Well, I hope you and I get to do several more journeys, I guess, for a lack of a better way to put it, because of course we've met some interesting people.
I don't know if there's another pizza funeral we can go to, but yes, there's other things we can do.
So, well, I appreciate your sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you,
And
Brooke.
I appreciate, this is Joe Corby, who was the executive director of AFTO for several years, and he continues to advocate for food safety in so many different ways. Thanks.